Good evening, everyone, or anyone. We'll see who watches tonight. Gordon Causey, as it always is, February 3rd, the day after Groundhog Day, 2025, just after coming up on 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time where I live. And of course, as always, Candy the Wonder Dog is here. I see I've already got a thumb up. Thank you, whoever is watching. And let's get her treat so that I can get on with my video. Danny is here wishing me a good evening, and good evening to you as well, Danny. Okay, shake. Lay down. Speak. 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 Give me a good one. Speak. 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 All right. Close enough for rock and roll. All right. If you haven't caught the news, and maybe you haven't, it is being widely reported that there has been a 30-day pause placed on the imposition of the 25% tariffs that Trump was threatening to impose on Canada. Cryptomeria, haven't seen you for a bit. Cryptomeria is here. Candy, yes, she is all about the cookies, all about getting her TREAT. So if you haven't heard the news, there has been a 30-day pause. This is relatively breaking within the last hour, 2, 3. Mexico, prior to Canada announcing it, Mexico had announced that they had been given a 30-day reprieve, and that now Canada has subsequently announced as well. Justin Trudeau on X, Twitter, has announced that Canada likewise has been given a 30-day reprieve. And it's interesting. Danny's writing that we basically have 30 days to fix our border. I think there's more to it than that. I've been reading a fair bit more on this, and it's a case where for Trump to be able to bring in an executive order, it has to be under the guise of an emergency. Taxation policy is typically something that is handled by the Congress, by the House and Senate, and then signed by the president. This is President Trump acting unilaterally. And the reason he was able to do it was because he had invoked something of an emergency situation, and the emergency was what he framed as the inundation of fentanyl coming across both the Canadian and the Mexican borders. So given that as a quote-unquote emergency, that was his justification for acting unilaterally via an executive order instead of going through the legislative branch of government. And Danny's writing, made in Canada, fentanyl was coming into the U.S. Well, likewise, though, it must be noted, Trump on numerous occasions has said that Canada, we have a large trade deficit with Canada. They're ripping us off. Okay, so is it the fentanyl, or is it that we're ripping you off, that there's a trade deficit? Is the trade deficit the issue, or is fentanyl the issue? Trump has also posited the idea of eliminating U.S. Citizens from having to pay income tax, and has venerated a former U.S. president who was president at the end of the 19th century, toward the end of the 1800s, President McKinley, who was famously very much in favor of tariffs. And that was a main driver of U.S. revenue. Government-generated revenue was through the imposition of tariffs on businesses. And the late 1800s, early 1900s, the economies were not nearly as integrated as they are now. I tend to think, my own personal view, is that this is a bargaining ploy by Trump to get all manner of concessions on the trade front. On the border, I do think he is concerned about fentanyl coming into the U.S., but I think I think it amounts to a negotiating ploy. It's interesting to watch the way this is being reported by the various news media. If you watch the Fox News and the right side of the media spectrum, those who like Trump, they are framing this as a big win. One thing Canada has done is Canada, my country, we're spending $1.3 billion on border enhancements, hiring more border agents. Alberta RCMP now has a Black Hawk helicopter that they have acquired to police or surveil the border. And I'll tell you, heading into work this morning, I had it in my head, the famous 7 words that are said over and over and over again during the Star Wars movies. And the words are, I have a bad feeling about this. I just had a bad feeling about these tariffs and what it was going to do. And I mentioned in my stream the other day that Toronto Raptor fans had taken to booing the American national anthem, the Star Spangled Banner. Well, it's now likewise being reported that at a hockey game in Nashville, Tennessee, involving the Ottawa Senators and the Nashville Predators, that Nashville fans were booing the Canadian anthem. And this is sad. This is sad. As I expressed, I think it was yesterday, I would not be booing the American national anthem. I would not boo the Star Spangled Banner. I'm not surprised, given the news that we've been booing their anthem, that now American fans are booing our anthem. And this is worrisome, very worrisome, that this rise of nationalism is a big Cryptomaria likewise writes, thank you, that he's not booing the American national anthem. You won't catch me booing it. If anyone starts to boo it, I'm going to start singing it as loudly as I can. I know all the words. Everyone knows. I've told everyone on this station, 9 years or so growing up, almost 10 years spent growing up in the United States. I know the pledge. I know the national anthem. But I almost wonder to what degree it begs the question to my mind. There's so many things going on in the world right now. We have the tariff situation that was sucking all the oxygen out of the room. When I was at work, I had someone come up to me, someone with whom I work, who knows that I'm very much politically inclined. And Dave asked me, do you think Trump is a psychopath? Danny is quoting that line saying, Han Solo, I have a bad feeling about this kid. Yeah, I don't know how many times that line is repeated in the Star Wars franchise, but it's over and over and over and over. It's got to be in every single film. And that was my feeling this morning, is that we were going to be crushing our economy. I thought the retaliatory tariffs were a bad idea. I thought diplomacy would have been the better avenue, rather than just an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, and fighting fire with fire and creating just more fire. Because it's the country that imposes tariffs. So when the U.S. was imposing tariffs on goods imported from Canada, that was going to be negatively impacting American consumers. The impact on Canada would have been in terms of jobs. It would have been on jobs. Then when Canada was set to retaliate, that would have impacted Canadian prices and potentially some American jobs. I've got Esteban Gonzalez. Hi, hello. Joined your channel a couple times. Awesome. Thank you very much, Esteban. I'm going to assume, given your name, that you hablo español. Muy poquito. Poquito. Very little Spanish here. Feliz Año Nuevo. Happy New Year. I've been down in Cuba, Dominican, Panama, typically around the wintertime, around New Year's. Appreciate everyone who comes on to the live. I don't have a lot to talk about tonight. That was just the main thing, because I know, it's a busy world, but I've been wondering to what degree we've got all the news about tariffs and everyone fixating on that. I'm hopeful this should be the last video I do on this little tablet. I'm heading out tomorrow to pick out a new laptop. So I will be back on the wide screen. Esteban likes my horrible Spanish. I'll give you a joke. I haven't told a joke on my channel for a while. And it's how many Latinos does it take to screw in a light bulb? How many Latinos does it take to screw in a light bulb? It only takes one, as in Juan Valdez, Juan, Juan. Ha ha ha. My 11-year-old told me that one, and I told him, don't tell it at school. In our hyper politically correct world, goodness knows someone might be offended. I think it's a cute little joke, though. Anyway, so, you got the tariff news. Thankfully, that seems to have died off. And Denny has a quick joke for me as well. Justin Trudeau. We are... And I have Esteban saying, you don't call Pablo, he's the plumber. Ha ha ha. Very good. At any rate, so the tariff news sucking all the oxygen out of the room. All the plane crashes happening, the one in Washington, the one in Philadelphia, and then a couple other less severe incidents, one in Houston, one at Chicago's O'Hare. But that's getting a lot of attention. And goodness knows what else is going on in the world. We have Benjamin Netanyahu now meeting in Washington with Donald Trump, his first official visit since Donald Trump took the White House. There was a meeting prior to Trump coming into the White House when Bibi traveled down to Mar-a-Lago, the Trump estate down in Florida. And that's going to be an interesting thing, because we have a lot happening on the world stage. We have Iran now unveiling their underground missile stockpile and threatening war. There's so many things happening in the world right now, and it's hard to decide what is, typically I think a lot of it is distractive. It's just to keep our attention focused away. And while at work today, I was talking to a number of young people, guys who are typically in and around, somewhere kicking around the age of 20 to 25, in that neighborhood. And it amazed me the degree to which they're completely tuned out on world events and have no idea what's happening in the world. They live in their own little bubbles. And in a lot of cases, and the biggest topics of conversation amongst the younger people, I find, especially young guys, is talk about computers, talk about gaming. It's about computer games, gaming. And that their world is consumed with, they live in a virtual world. It's almost like, I think a lot of them genuinely, they have two identities. They're bipolar in a fashion. They have their online identity involved with their gaming worlds. And Danny's writing, the young pups, they are clueless. I wonder to what degree, you see, I didn't grow up in that world. I did not grow up in the world that the younger people are growing up in today. So it's hard for me to, climb up on the seat of the throne of judgment and say, well, if I was growing up now, because I'm not growing up now. I've had an entirely different life experience than the kids growing up in today's world. And did I engage in the popular activities when I was growing up? To a large degree, I did. A lot of them I did. I was into sports because that was a thing when I was growing up. You got engaged in sports. Or other activities. There wasn't a virtual world. If you wanted to engage with people, you had to, all kinds of different avenues, just like there are all kinds of different games out there. Some of the kids are into anime and role-playing games, anime role-playing games. Some of the kids are into, I don't know. I don't know all these games. I don't travel in that world. I'm just going to read what's being written here. Danny's writing, thank God we didn't. I think I'd off myself today. It's totally depressing compared to my childhood. But you can't blame the kids. This is the world they've been handed. And then you think about the fact that it was only 5 years ago that we were embarking on the quote unquote COVID era. I was talking to there's a newer employee, a young lady who is 20 years of age. And so when COVID broke out, I asked her, how old were you when COVID started? She was in grade 10, very formative years. And they shut the world down and told kids to stay home and, connect everything, and everything became digital. And that's when I just the other night, as a point of curiosity, I was wondering, what was my first video that I did? And it was actually in mid to late December of 2020. So 4+ years ago, I did my first YouTube video. And what was I talking about? I was talking about the fact that we were coming up to another lockdown, and that I was giving statistics from the CDC on the number of adverse reactions that have been reported in the first 3 days of the rollout of the COVID jabs, and how many people had suffered adverse events that caused them to miss work or to seek medical attention, a whole bunch of things. You can check it out if you go to my videos and just hit oldest. I was heavier back then. I'm a lot lighter now. I've trimmed down a fair bit since then, and that's because back in December of 2020, I was still in the. Here's something funny. You want to get in shape? Get out of the Army. At that time, I was still serving in the military, but I worked in a radar station that was 24/7, 365, and I was working 12-hour shifts, rotating between days and nights. And anyone who's done rotating shifts knows the number that plays on you physically, because with us it was 2,800 hours to 0800 hours, or 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. and then 8 a.m. till 2000, or 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., either the overnight or the day shift. And so you're there. If you go in I would leave the house at 7 or so in the morning, get there about 7:30. So you're there for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then you work the night shift, and you go in at 8 p.m. and you come home at 8 o'clock in the morning, and you only have 12 hours between the time when you leave work to the time when you have to be back. It was about a half-hour commute back and forth for me. And so, yeah, it just messes with your system, and weight gain is part of it. So now I'm a lot trimmer than I was back when I was in the Army. Esteban is saying, it sounds like advisory. But again, I can't say that I blame the young kids. Hank is saying, Gordon, you are now tariffed by Hank. Hank is imposing a tariff on me. I love the sense of humor that everyone has on here. It's awesome, because in this crazy world, there's more news about Santorini, which I mentioned yesterday, the Greek island of Santorini. There's more seismic activity going on. They're calling them cluster seismic events, earthquake events. Not volcanic yet, but they're not ruling out the potential for volcanic activity. And there are some videos out there you can watch. This is that event, the one I spoke of, the major that happened about 1500 or so BC. So about 3,500 years ago, there was a massive volcanic eruption of a volcano on the Greek island of Santorini in the Aegean Sea. Massive. And it destroyed, absolutely wiped out the Minoan civilization. And because of the proximity of Greece to Egypt, there is evidence to suggest that it could have caused or had a hand in causing the famous 10 plagues of the book of Exodus in the Bible, which are also, those same plagues are enumerated on two other extra biblical sources, one being the Ipawar papyrus and another being a stela, which is a large stone monument with a history written on it. And Denny is, as he always does, Jesus is king. That was one thing I was doing at work today, was trying again to sell, that's a bad way to put it, but trying to talk to the kids at work about the gospel, good news of Jesus Christ. And it is so hard in today's world because kids today, and I sound so old when I say that, the kids today, but those who have been growing up in this world for the last 30, 40 years don't have the mirror. I mean, I grew up in a time when there was still corporal punishment. Kids, you did wrong. Now, children never do anything wrong because that would damage their fragile self-esteem. So kids are growing up now to think that everything they do is right. There's no sin. There's no wrongdoing. There are no consequences. I was mentioning that to someone at work today, that back in I don't know how many times I got held back after school for detention. But now everyone has to get on a bus. So you can't have detention for students. The world that we're living in has gone up. It's been turned upside down. And, and I think that guy at work today, I had a guy, Dave, came up to me. He said, "So do you think Trump's a psychopath?" And I said to him, "No, I don't think he's a psychopath. I would give the moniker psychopath to anyone who doesn't know the difference between a man and a woman." And it got me to thinking that in terms of Donald Trump versus, say, Joe Biden, would Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and the liberal left-wing, ultimately Marxist ideology, there seems to be something of a loyalty test, and the loyalty is with respect to this Marxist, woke, left, liberal ideology, identity politics. What do they call it? Critical race theory and everything like that, about taking humanity and putting us all into our little boxes so that we can fight with each other. That you would be under the Biden, under the Trudeau era liberals, and it'll be the same under Mark Carney. There's an expectation on people to be loyal to the ideology. With Trump, it strikes me that the loyalty test is to Trump himself. And I don't think Trump is at all ideological. I don't think Trump is an ideologue. Trump just wants to win. And whatever ideology he'll change with the win, whatever ideology will win for him, that's the ideology he will adopt. Anyway, I didn't have a lot to say tonight. I just wanted to let you know that tomorrow's video, if I do one tomorrow, should I always predicate things because goodness knows stuff can happen, but I'm going to pick out a laptop tomorrow. So I'll have full functionality. I'll be pointing and clicking. No more of this scrolling on a little tiny tablet with the narrow screen. And maybe looking at getting some software that'll enable me to increase the level of functionality. I'd like to be able to share comments to the screen, that kind of stuff. So I'm going to be looking at that as well. Kind of dress up. Get away a little bit from what I've talked about, how my miserable, pathetic little YouTube station with, bare bones production values, I still think it'll be pretty bare bones, but a little better, maybe. Might even look at a mic. We'll see. Although I don't think the audio quality is too bad. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see how things go. Anyone got anything to say before I sign off? World's going crazy. Danny's asking Billy Gates. He's saying that Bill Gates qualifies as a psychopath in his books. Hang's telling me to green screen it. That might be a little too technologically advanced for me, a green screen. But I had some other thoughts rolling around in my head tonight, but I worked a 9-hour shift tonight, so it's been one of those days. I had been planning. I was expecting the tariffs to go on, and so I had kind of a stream of consciousness heading in that regard. Now they've been paused, and I genuinely don't think they're coming back. I think cooler heads will prevail, saner heads will prevail, and that we won't be facing this. But if we were, it certainly served as another tick in the box in my mind as this march that we're seeing toward conflict, toward war. And I'm wondering about the degree to which AI is going to play a role in any future conflicts. And I wonder if AI is going to be programmed to address what many people like Bill Gates thinks is the most existential threat facing the planet right now. And Ted Turner was being interviewed by Charlie Rose many years ago when the population of planet Earth was something like 6-point-something billion. And he was asked by Charlie Rose, what do you think the biggest problem facing the world is facing right now? And Ted Turner said, too many people. It's too many people. When I was born, it was less than 2 billion. Now we're over 6. Too many people chasing too few resources. And many people think that Ted Turner could have been the individual who, or at least one of the main individuals behind those infamous Georgia Guidestones. So anyway, we'll have more to say in the days and weeks to come. Look forward to seeing you all back with better functionality. Yes, Danny, woohoo, new laptop. And he says, we like your format just fine. Yeah, not going to dress it up too much, but the one thing I do like is I've seen some other YouTubers, and what they do is they're able to take a comment and display it on the screen so that everyone sees it. Like if I see a comment that I want to highlight, I want to be able to say, okay, check out what Danny wrote, what Cryptomeria wrote, what Hank wrote, what whoever wrote. So I want to be able to do that. So I'll sign off now. Thank you for the likes. Thank you for the subscriptions. Thank you for the shares. I was surprised to see my videos have been shared 1,000+ times. I've done a lot of them. I guess it's not that surprising, but you're always welcome to share. Maybe not this one. It wasn't the greatest. Didn't have much to say on anything aside from the fact that the tariffs are not going through. So an Eat Me showed up. CO Jamalik came in. Lots of people showing up. We'll have more to say in the days and weeks to come. I want to get on to something CO Jamalik brings to mind with respect to the Bible, and can we trust it? Can we trust Scripture? Has this been altered, changed? Want to do a video on that. Has this been altered, changed? Can we not trust this? Is there secret knowledge that's being hidden from us to hold us back as humanity? That's a popular notion among many because we've been lied to over and over and over and over again throughout the course of our lifetimes. So it's certainly a natural default position to say, well, why wouldn't they lie about this? And I'm gonna speak to that. I got to do a little more reading. I mean, these are heavy topics I like to delve into from time to time. Anyway, I'll end my video the way I always do. A blessing a blessing that was given to God's covenant chosen people. The words were given to Moses by God, and Moses passed them on to Aaron. Lisa's life is saying, well, there's so many versions of the Bible. Which one is the right one? Oh, we'll get on to that. There are many different translations. It's like the word welcome. The room was welcoming. And I say that in English. Now I ask you, how do you say that in French? You could say, la salle, c'était chaleureux, chaleureux, which means warm, but it also means welcoming. How do you translate different words? Jeremiah 29:11 that I frequently cite on this channel. Many will have it as a life verse. Know that the plans that I have for you, plans for your welfare or plans to prosper you. Some translations say plans for your welfare. Some say plans to prosper you. Well, when someone is prospering, they are faring well. They that's welfare. Fare well, welfare. If I care about someone's welfare, I want them to prosper. The word, of course, is a Hebrew word that we're translating from, and one individual decides to translate it as your welfare, and another decides to translate it as to prosper. But the Hebrew word didn't change, so the Bible hasn't changed, just the manner in which we translate it. And this is where I find it advantageous to have a second language. I'd like to have more. I know a little German, a little Spanish, a little this, a little that, but words can be translated different ways. And when you come out with a Bible, like there's the Living Bible, the English Standard Revised, which is what this is, Revised Standard Version. There's the King James, there's the New King James. And when you copyright something, as I understand it, there has to be a certain percentage deviation, if you will, from the original in order to not violate copyright. So if you come out with a new translation of the Bible, it has to be at least 5 or 10% different from other translations. So just translate words differently. There are lots of synonyms. Welcome. The room was welcoming. The room was warm. The room was inviting. Pull out your thesaurus and pull out all the synonyms you can find. But the Greek text and the Hebrew texts and the Aramaic texts on which our English language Bible is based, they haven't changed. You can go back, there are copies, they find fragments of the Gospels that date back to the 2nd century, before the Council of Nicaea, which was in 325 AD, which is when Rome more or less started to take over the Christian faith. But that was a process. And anyway, I'll get into it more. I will get into it more, but unless you're willing to go out and learn ancient Greek, ancient Hebrew, ancient Aramaic, you're going to be left with reading English translations of the original texts. And you can read different versions. You can pull out a thesaurus and make your own translation. Words have synonyms. Like I was talking about, welcoming, inviting, warm. Pick your word. But you can't, the ultimate thesis statement I will have is that you can trust this. When they went to the Dead Sea Scrolls, the great Isaiah scroll that was found was from the earliest manuscript we had of Isaiah was from the Middle Ages, like from the 1400s, somewhere around there. That was the text we have. And the Dead Sea Scroll version was sometime around the years, around the time of Christ, maybe just before. And the Isaiah scroll that from the Dead Sea Scrolls at Qumran and the 1400 year later texts that existed from the Middle Ages that have been copied by hand century after century after century. And you line the two up. And are they 100% perfectly, like a Xerox copy? No. But it's the same story, the same words. Punctuation's a little different. Spelling conventions of words change. I'm a Canadian. I write labor, L-A-B-O-U-R. But if that gets transmitted down to an American and they start copying what I'm writing, they're going to change labor, L-A-B-O-U-R, to L-A-B-O-R to the American spelling. Does that mean it's different? And those are the kind of changes that existed. But when you're looking at, if you read the Middle Ages version of Isaiah, or you read the one from the Dead Sea Scrolls from 1300 years earlier, same book, written in Hebrew. Anyway, you can trust this book. That's my bottom line. And the blessing that I always like to give, you should know it by now, anyone who's been here, from the, I think it's the end of chapter 6 in Numbers. May the Lord bless and keep you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you. May the Lord be gracious to you, and may the Lord grant you peace. And he will. I always say that. He will. Invite him in. Get into his word. Listen to some lectures. I would strongly advise listening to any of the lectures that Jordan Peterson gives on the biblical series if you're looking to get more depth of meaning on the biblical stories, be it the Garden of Eden, the story of Cain and Abel, the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, the story of the Tower of Babel, story of Jonah and the great fish or whale. Anyway, God bless, and hopefully everything goes well tomorrow. And I'm live on a new, updated, more robust tablet, not one, or more robust laptop, not one that's 7 or so years old like my old one. God bless. Talk to you soon.